Hi everybody. The big takeaways from Chapter 2 on biology and behavior are these. Now in this chapter we begin discussions about the biology behind human experience, kind of behind the scenes. Our thoughts and our whole mental life that we'll discuss this semester, feelings and emotions and behavior, of course, truly originate in this underlying mental, biological processes. So in this chapter, we discuss biology and behavior. Now, the first big takeaway, let's be sure you know the neuron and the structures at the synapse. The synapse is the little space in between the neurons. Unlike blood in the circulatory system, where there's actual movement, blood's actually moving through your body, neurons in the nervous system are laid out end to end. So a message is passed down. One neuron tells the next a message and says, "Psst, pass it on." And the process continues with no actual movement. All the neurons stay in place where they are. So it's really interesting that this form of communication, it would seem really slow, right? But it's lightning fast. Communication actually happens like this between neurons in your nervous system. The release of chemicals into the synapse, also known as the synaptic gap, by the way, by the first neuron. That's the first step. The second neuron detects the presence of those chemicals, reads the message, what kind of message is it, and at its other end, releases the same chemicals to pass on the message to the next neuron. Now here's what's amazing. When you understand the mechanics of what's actually happening here, it's fascinating that the brain receives these messages so quickly. That form of communication would seem really slow, but it's lightning fast. Now, those messages are actually neurotransmitters passing between two neurons. Neurotransmitters are those chemicals released into the synapse. There's three to be familiar with because we'll see these discussed again later on in the semester. Dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. Dopamine is responsible for the human experience of pleasure. When you experience pleasure, dopamine is being released as a neurotransmitter, or a sense of reward for a behavior. That's dopamine. Serotonin affects mood, sleep, appetite, as well as interesting impulsivity and aggression. Endorphins, you actually may have heard of endorphins. They provide relief from pain, again, feelings of pleasure, and provide a sense of well-being. Three neurotransmitters to be familiar with, because we'll see these again showing up later on in the semester. Second big takeaway from this chapter, be sure to know the structures of the brain, key structures of the brain, especially the limbic system. Now notice the core primitive brain. There's this core primitive brain at the center of your brain versus the outer layers, what we call the newer brain. Sometimes people refer to this as the old brain, and then the newer brain is the part that covers the old brain. This is a result of the evolution of our human species from earlier life forms. Smaller animal brains have only the older, more primitive features. Larger brains, like humans, have the added layers of sophisticated features, a more advanced, more evolved brain, if you will, including things like language in some higher species, and in humans, imagination and creativity. We believe it comes from those newer layers of the brain. Now, recall Charles Darwin from your science class. Recall Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and the survival of the fittest. All animals, including humans, have the same basic needs for survival. And that's what's in the old brain, in the old brain, which in this chapter we call the limbic system, contains those basic survival concerns, such as hunger and thirst, sexual desire to reproduce the species, the need to seek safety, security. These survival concerns remain a pretty important part of human experience. Be sure you know the limbic system. The third big takeaway from this chapter, the last big takeaway, be sure you understand this fight or flight reaction that's activated by the peripheral nervous system. Now, the peripheral nervous system connects the central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord, to the rest of the body. And it has two important parts. The somatic nervous system, which connects the nerves that make it possible for the body to sense and move. And then our focus, the autonomic nervous system, again, part of the peripheral nervous system. We want to focus on this autonomic nervous system, which itself has two parts that we want to pay attention to because they activate what we call in psychology the fight or flight reaction. That's really important for human survival. As you can imagine, it's linked to that limbic system for survival. In the face of danger, the fight or flight reaction gets you ready to either stay and fight or to run for your life. to stay and fight or run in flight. Fight or flight reaction, we call it. Now here's how it works. The sympathetic nervous system mobilizes the body's resources when we detect emergencies or during stress. Then after the emergency is passed, the parasympathetic nervous system subsequently relaxes those heightened bodily responses back to normal levels. So here's what happens. When you sense danger, the sympathetic nervous system turns on step by step. In the lungs, we're breathing faster. The pupils of your eyes may dilate, and other parts of the body get ready to either run or to either fight or to run away, fight or flight, because these bodily functions increase your likelihood of survival from this encounter. Now, after the suspected danger passes, the parasympathetic nervous system turns on step by step, undoing and relaxing all of those body systems because this heightened condition of alertness is just not sustainable. So know that in the face of danger, the fight or flight reaction gets you ready to either stay and fight or run for your life. Fight or flight. So in summary, the big takeaways from Chapter 2 on biology and behavior. Number 1, familiarize yourself with the neuron and the structures at the synapse. And 3 neurotransmitters or chemicals that you need to know that have significant roles in human experience. Big takeaway number 2, know key structures of the brain, especially the limbic system, responsible for survival concerns that remain a pretty important part of daily human experience. And number 3, be sure you know the fight or flight reaction. It's activated by the peripheral nervous system when we detect emergencies or during stress. This mobilizes the body's resources to ensure our safety. Those are the big takeaways from Chapter 2 on biology and behavior. Thanks, everyone.